For 16 years, we've been building a site that's been called innovative, insightful, and informative. Now there's a new name for it. We're now NBCNews.com.
Returning to our story, a remote border town has been rocked by the murder of one of its brightest young stars, a pretty, athletic high school junior. Her killer, one of her oldest friends, who's confessed. But some say his story doesn't quite add up. And now the victim's family is about to realize that when it comes to that terrible night in the desert, they literally don't know the half of it. Again, Keith Morrison.
It was one of Mickey Costanzo's favorite places, the high school track, where she won so many races. Now on a bright spring day in May 2011, 2 months after her murder, a somber celebration was underway here. It would have been Mickey's 17th birthday.
I bought a cake, balloons, took it down to the high school, invited her friends, and that was the hardest day next to finding out she was murdered.
Apparently murdered by a childhood friend, Cody Patton. He'd confessed, was sitting in jail, the death penalty a distinct possibility. Or so everyone thought. But as they celebrated Mickey's life, there was something about her death they didn't know. Several days earlier, Cody's legal team had a surprise visitor, Cody's fiancée, Tony Fratto. She arrived wearing her pajamas, and with Cody's father at her side, said she was ready to tell the lawyers the story.
So are you willing to proceed?
I think so, yeah.
And we talked and we recorded the conversation with her permission, and it was dynamite.
You're about to hear a whole new version of Mickey's murder that would turn the case upside down.
Am I to believe that you in fact were present when the girl got killed?
Yes.
And here from the lips of this quiet little teen came a horrifying story. Cody wasn't the only killer. It began for her, she said, with a text from Cody saying, "I have her," meaning Mickey was with him in an SUV he had borrowed. He wanted Tony to join them. Cody picked her up, she said, and the three drove around, ending up at the gravel pits. Then Mickey and Cody got out of the car, and she started yelling at him and then pushing him.
I looked away just for like a split second and then heard like a loud thud on the car or whatever. So I had got out to see what happened.
What did you see when you got out?
Michaela was on the ground and she wasn't really moving at that point.
She said Cody started digging what appeared to be a grave. And when he'd finished, with Mickey lying semi-conscious on the ground, they both started kicking her, punching her, hit her with a shovel.
She wasn't moving, and so we had moved her to the grave, and then we were kind of standing there deciding what do we do? We didn't know what really we had just done. I remember like holding down her legs and we had slit her throat.
Who cut her throat?
It was both of us.
It was both of us. To Cody's defense attorney, 5 little words that changed everything. Tony Fratto freely admitting that she had also murdered Mickey.
All of a sudden, it changed from one crazed killer to 2 people who committed a homicide. It gave us something to point the case towards, other than Cody's acts.
2 killers sharing the guilt. Maybe with some good lawyering, his client could escape the death penalty after all. Why Tony said those things was almost beside the point, for Olson anyway. But not for Tony's parents, not when they found out.
No one that knows Tony would have ever seen this coming. It just isn't possible.
Their daughter hadn't even been a suspect, not even a person of interest. Now she confessed herself into a murder that could send her to death row.
My immediate thought was that she's been coerced into saying this.
Somebody's made her do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
What person popped into your head?
Cody's dad.
Cody's father, Kip Patton, the man who delivered Tony to her meeting with Cody's lawyers. Patton declined a request to appear on our program, but he insisted. Tony told him what happened, and it was her idea to come forward and meet with Cody's attorneys. He just drove her there because Tony's parents were out of town. Do you think sometimes that she thought, I can't do this with my parents present. I have to wait till they're gone before I can actually go and confess to this terrible thing?
I don't know, possibly so, but we've always been very, very open.
Or possibly a misguided attempt to save Cody? But she'd only succeeded in incriminating herself.
She doesn't believe that she's confessing to the law enforcement. She's talking to Cody's attorneys, asking them if it's going to help.
But Tony didn't have an attorney-client relationship with Cody's lawyers. No privilege, no protection. So they turned her statement over to law enforcement. And when Detective Donald Burnham reviewed the tape and transcript of Tony's confession,
I determined that we had probable cause to arrest her just based on her own admission.
Tony Fratto, just 18, was booked, held without bail, facing, perhaps, a capital murder charge, same as Cody.
I, in my heart of hearts, knew Tony had something to do with it because they were a couple. It was very hard for me to know she was at school wearing his engagement ring, acting like nothing had happened and she knew nothing about it when I knew she knew.
I said, I am so glad that she is now sitting and facing what he is. Now it makes sense.
But little Tony Fratto hardly seemed like a killer. She was a beauty queen at 13, West Wendover Junior Miss, in fact. Devoutly religious, too, and extremely close to her parents.
She always went to church with us. You know, a lot of kids, you have to force them to get out of bed and go. It was never that way with Tony.
She had goals in her life. She knew exactly where she wanted to go.
So a truly responsible child.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Outside of her family, Tony had very few friends, except Cody, of course. From the moment they started dating in the 9th grade, they were virtually inseparable.
She loved him. She thought she loved him.
He was very, very possessive, did not like her time taken up by anyone else but him.
Now the Frattos remembered a possessive, controlling Cody, so big and strong. And when they thought about it that way, they wondered, what was the real story behind their daughter's confession?